The dying light. The starship Prairie Dawn dropped out of faster-than-light travel above a world that should not have been brown. Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her forehead against the observation window, her breath fogging the reinforced glass. Below, the planet Velhara stretched across the viewport in shades of rust and amber. From orbit it looked like Mars. Dry. Lifeless. Wrong. That's impossible, whispered Jordan Chin, the team's soil microbiologist. He floated beside Elena in the zero-gravity, his dark eyes wide with disbelief. The records say this place was a garden world. Forests, oceans. Fields that stretched to the horizon. Elena said nothing. She had reviewed the same records during the 6-month journey from Earth. Images captured by exploration drones 40 years ago showed Velhara covered in violet-leaved forests and golden croplands. The Velhari people had been farmers for over 10,000 years, their civilization built not on conquest or industry, but on the patient cultivation of their world. Now their sun was dying. Captain Rodriguez wants us in the briefing room, said Maria Santos, the expedition's lead agronomist. She pulled herself through the corridor with practiced ease, her silver hair tied back in a tight bun. The Velhari delegation is ready to meet us. The briefing room was small and practical, designed for function rather than comfort. Captain Isabella Rodriguez floated at the head of the table, her weather-beaten face serious. Around her sat the rest of the team. 12 humans. No soldiers. No politicians. Just farmers, scientists, and people who understood dirt. The holographic display activated with a soft chime. An alien face materialized above the table. The Velhari representative was tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like copper in sunlight. 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern blinked slowly. Its mouth, a vertical slit, opened to reveal rows of flat grinding teeth. I am Keeper Theln, the alien said through the translation device. Its voice was soft, almost musical. We thank you for coming. Though I confess, we do not understand why you have. Elena leaned forward. We received your distress beacon 3 years ago. Your message said your world was dying. That your crops were failing. Yes, Theln replied. The alien's secondary arms, smaller than the primary pair, gestured in what might have been resignation. Our sun enters its final phase. In 200 of your years, it will expand and consume our world entirely. But we do not have 200 years. We have perhaps 20, maybe 30. The light grows weak. The warmth fades. Our plants wither in the fields. Jordan activated his tablet, pulling up spectral data. Your star is transitioning to a red giant phase earlier than predicted. The visible light spectrum has shifted. Less blue light, more red and infrared. Your plants can't photosynthesize efficiently anymore. We know, Theln said quietly. The Kethran Collective offered to relocate our people. The Axian Federation proposed artificial sun platforms. The Confederacy of Traders suggested we abandon farming entirely and join the galactic economy as laborers or merchants. Captain Rodriguez crossed her arms. But you refused. We are farmers, Captain. We have been farmers since before we built cities. Since before we touched the stars. To leave our soil, to abandon the practice of our ancestors, would be to lose what makes us Velhari. The alien's 4 eyes closed briefly. But we are also not fools. We cannot farm on a world that will not grow food. So we face a choice between death and extinction of our way of life. Maria leaned back, a slow smile spreading across her weathered face. What if you didn't have to choose? Theln's eyes opened. What do you mean? Humans have been farming for 12,000 years, Elena said. We've grown crops in deserts. In frozen tundra. In soil so poor it was basically sand. We've farmed in darkness and in drought. We've adapted plants to every climate on Earth and dozens of colony worlds. We don't grow food with fancy technology, added Jackson Webb, a 4th-generation farmer from Iowa. His accent was thick, his hands calloused even after months in space. We grow it with dirt. Good dirt. And we know how to make dirt good. Theln's posture shifted. The alien leaned forward, primary and secondary arms moving in complex patterns. The Kethran said our soil was depleted. That centuries of farming had exhausted it. The Axians said the problem was the light. That only their platforms could save us. They're half right, Jordan said. Your soil is depleted. The light is wrong. But those are problems humans have solved before. Not with machines. With biology. With patience. With things that have been growing on Earth for millions of years. The alien was silent for a long moment. When Theln spoke again, the translator seemed to struggle with the emotion in its voice. You would help us farm again? On a dying world. Elena smiled. It was the smile of someone who had spent 30 years making things grow in places they shouldn't. Keeper Theln, humanity has a saying. Where there's dirt, there's hope. We brought a lot of dirt with us. And seeds, Maria added. Thousands of varieties. Plants adapted to low light. Cold-hardy crops. Nitrogen fixers and soil builders. Mushrooms that can grow in near total darkness. Root vegetables that thrive in poor soil. We also brought composting systems, Jackson said. Biochar production equipment. Mycorrhizal fungi cultures. Cover crop seeds. Everything we need to rebuild your soil from the ground up. Theln's 4 eyes glistened with what might have been tears. Other species brought us ships. Technology. Offers of escape. You bring us fertilizer? We bring you the chance to keep being who you are, Elena said softly. Farmers. That's what we are too. And farmers help farmers. It's what we do. The alien stood slowly, all 4 arms extended in a gesture of supplication. When can you begin? Captain Rodriguez checked her display. We'll be in landing orbit in 6 hours. Our cargo holds have 40 tons of organic material, seed banks, and agricultural equipment. We're ready when you are. Then please, Theln said, and for the first time the translator captured something that sounded like hope. Please come down to our world. Come to our fields. Show us how to make things grow again in the dying light. The hologram faded. The briefing room fell silent. Maria was the first to speak. Well, team. Let's go save a harvest. Elena looked out the window again at the brown world below. Somewhere down there, in soil that hadn't felt a farmer's touch in too long, something was about to change. Humanity had crossed the stars not with weapons or conquest, but with the simple, stubborn belief that anything could grow if you gave it the right conditions. She pressed her hand against the glass. Let's show them what farmers can do, she whispered. The Prairie Dawn began its descent toward Velhara. In its cargo holds, seeds waited in the darkness. Seeds that would become food. Become hope. Become proof that even on a dying world, life could find a way. As long as someone was willing to get their hands dirty. Breaking ground. The landing pad was made of stone worn smooth by 10,000 years of use. Elena stepped off the shuttle ramp and felt the weight of Velhara settle into her bones. The gravity was lighter than Earth, about 80% standard, but the air felt heavy. Thick with dust and the smell of dried vegetation. She looked up at the sun hanging low on the horizon, a bloated orange sphere that cast long shadows across the barren fields. It was noon local time. The sun looked like sunset back home. Temperature is 12 degrees Celsius, Jordan said, reading from his handheld scanner. Atmospheric composition is within human tolerance. Oxygen levels actually slightly higher than Earth standard. But the light. He trailed off, shaking his head. It's wrong, Maria finished. She knelt and scooped up a handful of soil. It crumbled between her fingers like ash. Look at this. No structure. No aggregation. It's dead dirt. A delegation of Velhari approached across the landing field. Keeper Theln led them, flanked by 6 others whose robes were embroidered with symbols Elena recognized from the cultural briefings. Agricultural clan markings. These were farmer leaders, their people's most respected voices. Welcome to Velhara, Theln said. The translator clipped to the alien's chest rendered the words in flat English, but Elena heard the exhaustion underneath. We have prepared quarters for your team in the old agricultural research station. It has not been used in many seasons, but we have made it habitable. We appreciate it, Captain Rodriguez said. But before we settle in, we need to see your fields. We need to understand what we're working with. One of the other Velhari stepped forward. This one was older, its copper skin darker and marked with intricate patterns. I am groundkeeper Soral. I have tended the central farming district for 43 cycles. I will show you what remains of our work. They traveled in ground vehicles that hummed with electric motors, moving through what had once been a city of millions. The buildings were beautiful in their simplicity, organic curves and flowing lines that seemed grown rather than built. But they were empty now. Most of the population had retreated to underground habitats where temperature and light could be controlled. The fields stretched beyond the city limits. Thousands of acres of brown stubble and bare soil. Here and there, Elena saw the skeletal remains of irrigation systems, their pipes cracked and dry. Storage silos stood empty, their doors hanging open like mouths frozen in silent screams. We grew 80-fold varieties here, Soral said as they stopped at the edge of what had once been cropland. Grains that fed our children. Vegetables that sustained our elders. Fruits that marked our festivals and celebrations. Now we grow nothing. We import freeze-dried nutrients from the Catherine trade networks. It keeps us alive, but it is not food. Not real food. Jackson climbed out of the vehicle and walked into the field. He knelt, pushed his fingers deep into the soil, brought up a handful and squeezed. Nothing. The dirt fell through his fingers like sand. No organic matter, he said. No worms. No insects. Nothing living in this soil at all. Our soil organisms died when the cold came, Soral explained. When the light changed. We tried to replant. We used fertilizers. Chemicals. Nothing worked. The seeds would sprout, but they would not grow. They would wither and turn black within days. Maria walked a grid pattern across the field, stopping every few meters to take samples. Jordan followed with the soil testing equipment, running quick analyses. Elena watched them work with the practiced efficiency of people who had done this 1,000 times before. After 30 minutes, Maria returned to the group. Her expression was grim but not hopeless. The soil pH is too high, she said. The nutrient profile is completely out of balance. Nitrogen is nearly absent. The soil structure is gone, which means no water retention, no air spaces, no room for roots to develop properly. And there's a salt buildup from years of chemical fertilizer use. So it is hopeless, Soral said quietly. No, Maria replied firmly. It's fixable. All of it is fixable. It will just take time and work. Theln's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession. How much time? Elena stepped forward. That depends on what you need. If you need emergency food production, we can have edible crops in 90 days using our fastest growing varieties and controlled environment techniques. But if you want to restore this soil to full health, to make it capable of supporting your traditional crops again, we're looking at 2 to 3 years of intensive rehabilitation. 3 years, Soral repeated. The old Velhari looked across the dead fields. We have not successfully grown crops in 5 years. 3 more seems both an eternity and a miracle. Jackson pulled a small bag from his jacket pocket. He opened it and poured seeds into his palm. They were small, dark, and unremarkable. These are daikon radishes, he said. Earth crop. They grow fast and their roots go deep. Sometimes 4 feet down into hard soil. When they die and decompose, they leave channels in the earth. Pathways for water and air. They also pull nutrients up from deep in the soil and deposit them near the surface when they rot. He held the seeds out to Soral. This is where we start. Not with food. With healing. We plant things that will fix what's broken. Cover crops. Green manure. Plants that give more than they take. Jordan activated his tablet, pulling up complex diagrams. We brought bacterial cultures. Fungi. Earthworms from 6 different earth ecosystems. Compost tea brewing systems. Everything we need to rebuild the biological foundation of your soil. We also brought biochar, Maria added. Charcoal made from organic waste. When we mix it into your soil, it will hold water and nutrients. Create habitat for microorganisms. It will turn this dead dirt back into living soil. Theln looked at the human team with an expression Elena couldn't quite read. You speak of years of work. Of planting crops we cannot eat simply to heal the ground. Why would you do this for strangers? Elena thought about her childhood in the San Joaquin Valley. About watching her grandfather work land that had been farmed too hard for too long. About the patient, back-breaking work of restoration. Of choosing to do things right instead of fast. Because good farmers think in generations, not seasons, she said. Because soil is not just dirt. It's a living community. Billions of organisms working together to create life. When you destroy that community, you don't just lose crops. You lose part of the world's story. She knelt and pressed her palm flat against the barren ground. This soil remembers growing food. It remembers 10,000 years of Velhari farmers tending it with care. That memory isn't gone. It's just sleeping. We're going to wake it up. Soral moved to stand beside her. The old alien knelt as well, its 4 arms moving in a pattern that seemed almost like prayer. Where do we begin? The groundkeeper asked. Maria smiled. We begin with the oldest farming wisdom in the universe. We feed the soil and the soil feeds us. Jackson, start marking zones for the first cover crop planting. Jordan, set up the mobile lab and start culturing the microbial inoculants. Captain, we're going to need every hand available for the next 72 hours. What about me? Elena asked. You and I are going to teach these farmers everything we know about composting, Maria said. Because we're about to turn every scrap of organic waste on this planet into black gold. The sun hung low and orange on the horizon. The wind blew dust across the empty fields. But for the first time in years, there was movement in the agricultural district. Humans and Velhari working side by side, their hands in the dirt, their minds focused on a single purpose: to make things grow again. The first truckload of compost arrived as evening fell. Rich, dark, and smelling of earth. The Velhari farmers gathered around it, touching it with careful reverence. Some brought samples to their faces, breathing in the scent of decomposition and life. "It smells like hope," Theln whispered. Elena loaded a shovel and drove it deep into the pile. "It smells like the future," she said. "Now let's get to work." Under the dying light of a fading sun, the first seeds of renewal were planted in alien soil. And humanity showed the galaxy what farmers had always known: that life is stubborn, patient, relentless. And given half a chance, it will always find a way to grow. First harvest. 93 days after landing, the first green shoots broke through Velhari soil. Elena stood at the edge of Field 7, watching the sunrise paint the eastern sky in shades of crimson and gold. The air was cold enough to see her breath, but she didn't care. She had waited 3 months for this moment. The radishes had germinated. Thousands of tiny green leaves pushed through the dark earth, their stems strong and straight despite the weak sunlight. They shouldn't have been possible. The local temperature fluctuated wildly. The light spectrum was all wrong. The soil had been declared dead by 3 different alien agricultural assessment teams. But Earth plants were stubborn. "Look at them," Jordan said, walking up beside her with a steaming cup of synthetic coffee. His eyes were ringed with exhaustion, but he was smiling. "The mycorrhizal networks are establishing faster than projected. Soil respiration is up 40% in the treated zones. We have earthworm activity in 6 of the 12 test plots." "The Velhari farmers can't believe it," Maria added, joining them. She had dirt under her fingernails and her hair was coming loose from its bun. She looked happier than Elena had seen her in years. Groundkeeper Soral spent 2 hours yesterday just watching the radishes grow. Said it was the first time in a decade he'd seen anything green in these fields. Elena knelt and gently touched one of the seedlings. The leaf was cool and firm, full of water and life. "We still have a long way to go. These are just cover crops. Fast-growing soil healers. The real test comes when we try to grow actual food." "About that," Captain Rodriguez called out, walking across the field with a tablet in hand. "The Velhari Council wants to meet with us this afternoon. They've been monitoring our progress. They have questions." "What kind of questions?" Elena asked. "The hopeful kind." The council chamber was deep underground, insulated against the surface temperature extremes. 30 Velhari sat in a circular arrangement, their copper skin gleaming in the artificial light. At the center stood Keeper Theln and Groundkeeper Soral, with the human agricultural team arrayed before them. The eldest council member, an ancient Velhari whose skin had darkened to bronze, spoke first. "We have watched you work for 3 cycles. We have seen you spread what you call compost across our fields. We have seen you plant crops that you do not harvest. We have seen you introduce alien organisms into our soil." Elena felt her stomach tighten. This could go badly. "And we have seen," the elder continued, "green growing where we were told nothing could grow. We have measured temperature increases in the treated soil. We have detected chemical changes that our scientists said were impossible without industrial intervention." The elder stood, all 4 arms extended. "You have done in 90 days what we could not do in 5 years. How?" Maria stepped forward. "With respect, elder, you were trying to force your old crops to grow in new conditions. We're rebuilding the conditions first, then we'll worry about the crops. Your soil wasn't dead. It was sick. Everything we've done has been medicine for the earth." "The radishes," Soral said. "They are not food?" "They can be eaten," Jackson replied. "But that's not why we planted them. When they mature in another month, we'll till them back into the soil. Their roots have broken up the hard pan. Their decomposing tissue will feed billions of microorganisms. They're sacrificial plants. They give their lives to heal the ground." "We also planted clover, vetch, and winter rye in different zones," Jordan added, pulling up holographic displays of the various fields. "Each one serves a purpose. The clover fixes nitrogen from the air. The vetch provides ground cover to prevent erosion. The rye's deep roots pull up minerals from the subsoil." Theln moved closer to the display, studying it with all 4 eyes. "This is ancient knowledge, yes? Not advanced technology?" "Humans have been doing crop rotation and green manuring for thousands of years," Elena said. "Some of our oldest agricultural texts describe these techniques. We just understand the science behind them better now. We know about the bacteria that live in clover roots. We know about mycorrhizal fungi that connect plant roots in underground networks. We know about the millions of organisms in a single handful of healthy soil. But we haven't forgotten the basics, Maria added. Good soil. Good seeds. Patience. These are the foundations that never change no matter how advanced you become. The bronze elder was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke, the translator seemed to struggle with the weight of emotion. The Kethrans told us we were primitive for refusing to leave our dying world. The Axians said we were fools for clinging to farming when we could simply manufacture nutrients. The traders said our way of life was obsolete. They were wrong, Elena said firmly. Agriculture isn't primitive. It's fundamental. Every civilization in the galaxy eats. The question is whether they understand where that food comes from. Whether they respect the process. Whether they maintain the knowledge to feed themselves if the supply chains break down. Soral stepped forward. We would like to learn. Not just to restore our fields for now but to understand these principles. So that when we eventually must leave this world we can take this knowledge with us. So we can farm wherever we settle next. That's exactly what we hoped you'd say, Captain Rodriguez said. She gestured to Jackson. Our team has prepared a comprehensive agricultural training program. Everything from composting to seed saving to integrated pest management. We'll teach anyone who wants to learn. How long will you stay? Theln asked quietly. Elena had been dreading this question. She looked at her team, seeing the same conflict in their eyes. They had families back home. Lives on hold. But they also had fields here that needed tending. Crops that needed time. Our mission parameters allow for a 6-month deployment, the captain said. We're 3 months in. We have 3 months left. 3 months, the elder repeated. Will that be enough? Maria smiled. If we work together? If your people commit to learning these techniques? If we can get a successful food crop harvest to prove the concept? Yes. 3 months will be enough to get you started. The rest will be up to you. Then we commit, Soral said immediately. Every farmer in this district. Every young person who wants to learn. We will work alongside you. We will learn your methods. We will save your knowledge for future generations. There's one more thing, Jordan said hesitantly. We need to try growing one of your traditional crops. Something important to your culture. We've been healing the soil in Field 1 specifically for this purpose. The conditions there are as good as we can make them. But we need seeds. Seeds that haven't been stored, that are still viable. The council members looked at each other. A younger Velhari in the back stood up. I have seeds, it said. My family kept a seed vault. Traditional varieties saved from before the decline. We were called foolish for keeping them. But my grandmother insisted that as long as we had seeds, we had hope. What crop? Elena asked. Kelva grain, the young Velhari said. The sacred grain of our harvest festivals. We have not grown it successfully in 6 years. The last plants turned black and withered before they could produce seeds. But I still have 1 container of viable seeds from the final successful harvest. Elena felt her heart racing. This was the moment. The real test. Growing cover crops was one thing. Growing a culturally significant native crop in rehabilitated soil under a dying sun was something else entirely. Bring us the seeds, she said. We'll plant them tomorrow. The next morning, a crowd gathered at Field 1. Word had spread through the underground habitats. Velhari emerged into the cold dawn by the hundreds, bundled in thermal clothing, coming to witness something they had been told was impossible. The young Velhari, who introduced itself as Keeper Venet, stood at the field's edge with a ceramic container held in all 4 arms. Inside were seeds the color of amber, each one no larger than a grain of rice. These are the last seeds of my grandmother's line, Venet said. Seeds saved from a harvest 70 years ago, when Velhara was still green and our sun was still bright. If they fail, her legacy ends. Elena took the container with gentle hands. She could feel the weight of history in it, the weight of hope. They won't fail, she said. Your grandmother saved them for this moment. For the day when Velhara would learn to grow again. The planting was done by hand. Humans and Velhari working in rows, pressing seeds into dark, rich soil that smelled of compost and earthworms and life. The crowd watched in silence. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. When the last seed was planted, groundkeeper Soral stepped forward. The old alien knelt and placed both primary hands on the newly seeded earth. Grow, it whispered. Please. Grow. 15 days later, the Kelva sprouted. Elena received the message at dawn. She ran to Field 1 still in her sleep clothes, her heart pounding. The entire agricultural team was already there, along with what looked like half the Velhari population. The field was covered in tiny green shoots. Thousands of them. Perfect and alive and impossibly beautiful. Venet stood at the center of the field, tears streaming down its copper face. Around it, elderly Velhari were kneeling in the dirt, touching the shoots with trembling hands, making sounds that the translator couldn't capture but needed no translation. They were sounds of joy, of relief, of grief for the years lost and gratitude for the hope regained. "It's growing," Venet said when Elena reached it. "My grandmother's grain is growing. On Velhara. Under our own sun, weak as it is." Maria put her arm around the young Velhari's shoulders. "It's growing because the soil is alive again. Because we gave it what it needed. Food, air, water, life. The rest is just the plant doing what plants do. Reaching for the light. Any light. Even a dying one." Jackson was already taking measurements. Growth rate is slower than Earth normal for comparable grains, but that's expected given the light levels. If this continues, we're looking at harvest in 60 to 70 days. Right before we're scheduled to leave. "Then we'll time it perfectly," Captain Rodriguez said. She was smiling, her usual military reserve cracked by genuine emotion. "We'll see this through to harvest. We'll make sure they know how to do it again." Theln approached slowly, the keeper's movements careful, as if afraid the sprouting grain might disappear. "You have given us more than food. You have given us back our identity. Our purpose. Our future." Elena looked across the field of green shoots, then at the other fields beyond where cover crops grew in rotation, where earthworms tunneled through dark soil, where billions of microorganisms were building an ecosystem from the ground up. "We gave you some tools and techniques," she said. "You're the ones who did the work. Who believed it could be done. Who got your hands dirty and trusted the process. This is what humanity does?" Zoral asked. "You travel the stars to teach farming?" "We travel the stars for lots of reasons," Jordan said. "But yeah, sometimes we travel them for this. To share what we know. To help where we can. To prove that the old ways still work, even in new worlds." The sun rose higher, casting its orange light across the green field. It was a weak sun, a dying sun, but the plants didn't care. They grew anyway. Stubborn. Patient. Relentless. Just like the farmers who tended them. 67 days later, the Kelva grain turned golden. The stalks stood tall and strong, their seed heads heavy with grain. It was harvest time. The Velhari held a ceremony, their first harvest festival in 6 years. They sang songs in their ancient language. They wove garlands from the grain stalks. They prepared traditional foods using the first harvested seeds, inviting the human team to share in the meal. Elena stood with her team, watching the celebration. They would leave tomorrow. The Prairie Dawn was already in orbit, preparing for the journey home. But they wouldn't leave Velhara empty-handed. "The Council wants to establish a permanent agricultural exchange program," Captain Rodriguez told them. "They're asking Earth to send more farmers. More teachers. They want to spread these techniques to every farming district on the planet." "Will Earth agree?" Maria asked. "Are you kidding?" The captain laughed. "We just proved that human agricultural knowledge is valuable to alien civilizations. That we can restore dead soil on dying worlds. That our farming techniques work anywhere. The diplomatic corps is going to build a whole program around this." Jackson looked at the celebrating Velhari, at the fields of green spreading beyond the harvest zone. "We should call it something good. Something that explains what it is." "The Soil Restoration Initiative?" Jordan suggested. "Too technical," Maria said. She smiled. "How about the farmer's gift? Because that's what this is. Farmers sharing knowledge with farmers. The gift of knowing how to feed yourself." Elena raised her cup of Kelva grain tea, the first made from the new harvest. "To the farmer's gift," she said. "And to farmers everywhere. Human and Velhari. Past and future. May we never forget that our hands in the dirt connect us all." The team raised their cups together. On a dying world, under a fading sun, life had found a way. Because someone believed it could. Because someone was willing to work for it. Because at the end of the day, the answer to starvation was never technology or evacuation. It was dirt, seeds, knowledge, and the stubborn human insistence that anything could grow if you gave it half a chance. The harvest festival continued into the night. The fields stood green and golden. And somewhere in the cargo hold of the Prairie Dawn, sealed containers held thousands of samples. Soil, seeds, documentation. Proof that humanity's greatest export wasn't weapons or machines. Was hope. One handful of dirt at a time.